All right, so this morning we're going to be practicing drawing eyes. And eyes is something that I think most people feel confident like drawing, to an extent. But my goal, come over here so you can watch this, please. My goal is to help you guys be able to draw it a little bit more realistically and a little bit more like true to human anatomy. So what you want to do is you want to start, and most of you probably know this, but you want to start with a basic football shape. And typically, and this isn't always, but typically the top of the football shape is going to be more arched and dramatic, and the bottom of the football shape is usually a little bit flatter, okay? So if I start with like a more arched and dramatic top, and then the bottom is going to be a little bit flatter, okay? And then whichever is the inside of the eye, so like if the nose, I'll say the nose is over here just for the sake of drawing, okay? You want to have like sort of this little tear duct thing that sticks out right here. You know, that little ball that you cry out of? Make sure that you include that right there so it almost looks like a little manatee or something, okay? Then you want to sketch in, and I need to draw darker because this isn't showing up on the video. So generally when you're drawing, you draw nice and light to start and then you darken as you go, but I'm having to draw a little bit darker for the video. Okay, so then you need to draw in the iris, and the iris is the part of your eye that has the color. So whether it's brown or blue or green or whatever that color is, okay, it's the big circle in your eye. And what a lot of people do is they want to center the iris, but typically the iris is going to be more towards the top. And sometimes it doesn't even touch the bottom of the eye, and sometimes if it does, it like barely brushes it. So for the sake of this drawing, I'm going to have it not quite touch the bottom, but it's going to be interrupted by the top lid. And what I mean by that is you're not going to see the top of it. Like it would go all the way up, but your top lid closes and it kind of covers part of it. Okay? So there's that. Then you also want to drop in, there's a fold right here on your eyelid, and the fold is what lets you be able to open and close your eye. So you want to make sure that you block that in. And it's going to be closer to your eye on the edges, and it's going to get further away from your eye, like near the middle. And then this is where your ability to shade comes in. You remember at the beginning of the school, you did all those value exercises with darks and lights. That's where this really comes in, because there aren't really harsh lines on your face. I mean, if you look at a person, they don't, you're not just going to be able to like outline their features, right? It's all about where are the shadows and where are the highlights. So you always want to try to make sure that things that you're drawing aren't just defined by lines, but they're defined by a range of value or a change of value. Does that make sense? So rather than just leave this line here, I'm going to create some value. Okay? Now, your lid is not paper thin, right? It's got like some thickness to it. And so I like to drop in another line here, right above or right below it, just to show that it's not paper thin. And then I like to sort of, this is a tiny little sphere. You guys remember when we drew spheres? We practiced drawing spheres. This little tear duct right here is a tiny little sphere, so it's a good chance for you to practice drawing your sphere, shading in a little sphere right there, okay? Now, let's keep going. I'm looking at this little guide that I'm going to give you guys too. I also need to drop in the pupil. Now the pupil is the black part of your eye, and it is the part that opens and closes depending on if you're looking at something close or if you're looking at something far away and how much light. So if you're looking at something and the room is really, really dark, your pupil opens up really, really wide to let as much light in as possible. If you're looking at something and the room is really bright, then it closes to try to protect your eye and not get overexposed with light. That's the same way that a camera lens works, and that's the way that your eye works. So the size of the pupil really varies depending on who you're drawing, what they're looking at, what the lighting in the room is. But studies have been shown that humans are more attracted to big pupils. So it's really crazy. Like they've done studies in colleges and they've shown people portraits of the exact same person, and in one their pupil is really big and in one their pupil is smaller. And people always say that the one with the bigger pupil looks more approachable, looks nicer, looks prettier, looks more handsome, whatever. It's really weird, you know, how that one thing changes it. But for that reason, I like to draw my people with nice big pupils, because I know that scientifically people are going to think it's more attractive. So I'll do a nice big pupil. And again, you don't want it to be centered on the eye. You want it to be a little bit more up. And you want to leave a space for a highlight. So highlights, the shape of a highlight is going to mimic the shape of whatever the light is in the room. So like in here we have these fluorescent lights. The light hitting your eyeball is going to be like the shape of like the fluorescent light. I mean, if you look in someone's eye really closely, like I'm looking in your eye right now, I can see the shape of the fluorescent light. So depending on what the light source is, that's going to be kind of what the highlight is. But there's normally a highlight right in the middle of your eye, because your eye is round and the pupil is what sticks out the furthest. And so a lot of times that's where you'll see the highlight. So I want to make sure that I leave room for a bright, bright white there. If you don't have a highlight in the eye, then it will look like the person's eye is completely dry and dead, and we don't want that. We have a nice bright highlight in our eye because they're moist. And if somebody's getting ready to cry, you might see even more highlights in their eye because their eye's getting really, really wet. Okay, and you want to make sure that whatever you did for the highlight, it's pure, pure white. So if you need to go back and erase anything, erase it. All right, you guys can see that this is already starting to look like a realistic eye, but I have a lot more to do. So I also want to shade around here, because remember that the eyeball is a sphere. It's actually a ball in your head. It's hard to remember that because we never actually see it in that form. But it is a little ball, like a little golf ball sized ball stuck in your head, held in there by bones and ligaments, okay? So because it is a sphere, because it is a ball, you need to shade it like a ball. So there's going to be shadows on the edges, shadows around the bottoms, okay? A lot of times people have a little crease here. Their bottom lid, your bottom lid doesn't move as much as your top lid, but it does move a little bit. So you might have a little line there. It might not be as pronounced as your top one. Okay. Also, the bottom lid is not paper thin, so sometimes we like to add in another line right here to show that it's not paper thin. Now, I need to color in the iris. And a stereotypical way that a lot of people like to color in an iris is they'll go like this. And there's a reason for that, because a lot of times it looks like the patterns in the iris go in. But what I like to do is I like to start by darkening the outside of the iris. And some people with really dark colored eyes, you can't necessarily see all the patterns as clearly because it's darker. And so for that reason, you just kind of want to darken it. But if you look closely in really good light at pretty much anybody's eyes, they're actually pretty daggone intricate patterns. So it's normally going to be darker around the outside of the iris, and you'll normally see some kind of a zigzag throughout it, but you don't want the zigzag to look cartoonish, so make sure that you sort of blend it in. Okay, there we go. This is starting to look like an eye here. I'm looking at my little cheat sheet too to make sure I'm not forgetting to tell you any steps. So I shaded the sides, I shaded the tops and the bottoms to make it look like a sphere. Remember, you can use the side of your pencil to make your shading not so harsh. And I need to drop in some eyelashes. Now, another mistake that people make is they do a ton of eyelashes, and really all you need to do is just a little indicate. Why aren't y'all watching the demo? Y'all already know how to draw eyes really perfectly? Like, you don't need any help? You want to start, the biggest eyelashes that you're going to see are going to be on the outside of the eye, right? So we remember that this is the nose. So we're going to see eyelashes, and you want to start where the eyelash grows out of your skin and pull, okay? Because your eyelash is going to actually, if you've ever like looked at an eyelash, if you've ever had an eyelash fall out and you look at it, it's thicker where it touches, where it's like going into your skin, and then it kind of gets thin and tapers out. So you want to sort of mimic that. So I'm going to start where it grows out of the eyeball and pull, 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 pull. And as I'm pulling, I'm sort of letting go. Now, as they get closer to the middle, they're going to get shorter, okay? because these ones over here are angled out so you can see them better. You can see how long they are. In the middle, they're going to be shorter because they're actually like coming straight out towards us, so we don't see them as much. And then people don't normally have a ton of eyelashes over here. You could do a tiny little bit, okay? So be careful with the eyelashes not to overdo it. What I recommend is draw in some eyelashes, go back and kind of look at it, check, make sure you're not overdoing it. And if you're not overdoing it, you can go in and add some more. But if you're overdoing it, stop. And then in the bottom, you know, don't overdo it again. So start with more on the outside and follow the little curve the eyelashes have and go in, okay? All right, so there we go. And then sometimes what I like to do is I'll add a little bit more shading around it just to like give it some context. The nose is going to be here, so you're typically going to have a little bit of shading here for the arch of the nose. You don't want to necessarily give somebody bags under their eyes, but there we go, okay? And then for eyebrows, last thing, eyebrows, and then we'll move on. Well, and then I'll send you guys to draw. So the eyebrows typically are going to start above, straight above the inside of the eye, right? So if this is the nose, this is typically where the eyebrow is going to start, okay? Sometimes if it's not as groomed, it might start further over towards the center of the face, but this is a good, you know, kind of starting point. Where does the eyebrow stop? The eyebrow is going to stop at a diagonal from the edge of the eye, okay? So if you were to draw a line from the nose down here to the edge of the eye to here, that is where the eyebrow will stop, okay? So an angle from the edge of the eye and straight up from the middle of the eye. And then everybody's eyebrow arch is a little bit different, but I would just caution you to don't do it like super intense at first. Do kind of like a lighter arch because, again, you could make somebody look kind of crazy with too big of an arch. So I first just sort of map out the shape of the arch, and then just like with the eyelashes, to draw in the hairs for the eyebrow, you want to start where it touches your skin, where it grows out of your skin, and then pull out and sort of let go of the pressure on the pencil. Now here, your hairs of your eyebrows grow up. They grow this direction, okay? The further this way you get, they start to grow that direction, okay? And if any of you are really into like beauty and makeup, you kind of know that. Like when you're brushing your eyebrows, here you sort of brush up and then you start to like brush over. So keeping that in mind, the direction that those hairs grow, we're going to start to drop them in. And so I'm going to start by going up. And then as I go this way, I'm going to start going over like that, all right? So that's one little layer. So you want to keep going. And everybody's eyebrows are different. Different nationalities, races, genders, different, you know, just habits of people, whether they groom their eyebrows or whether they let them grow wild or whatever, are really going to be determining factors in what the eyebrow shape looks like, how thick the eyebrows are, things like that. So just think about all of those things when you're drawing. And so I'm noticing that this is pretty good, but this needs to get thicker over here. So you just slowly build them up. And what I recommend is stop, look at it, see how it looks, and then go back in and add some more. Because just like the eyelashes, you don't want to overdo it, okay?
Good morning, Booker T. Washington T-shirt staff and students. At this time this morning, we will be having our January fire drill.
Told you I heard that. Man, I have a good ear.
Map in your procedures, fire drill procedures, and please stand by for our fire drill. Thank you.
All right, one quick thing, and just like sort of when you're doing your makeup, you don't want it to look super harsh, so I kind of go over with the edge of my pencil. I'm saying like you do your makeup, like I don't do my makeup. You go over with the arch of your pencil like this, and just sort of smooth it out, and there we go. So I'm going to stop the video for the fire drill, but hopefully this was helpful. When we get back, I'll give you guys your instructions.